Welcome to WWII, where we dive headfirst into the most mind-bending scenarios history never dared to write. Today, we're setting the stage for a truly explosive thought experiment. Imagine, if you will, a single room, a single moment, and two of the 20th century's most formidable figures. We're talking about Adolf Hitler and Winston Churchill, locked away together in the summer of 1940. What would happen? What could possibly unfold? The potential outcomes are staggering, the ripple effects unimaginable. Prepare yourselves for a journey into the deepest currents of alternative history. Before we begin, take a moment to ponder. What do you think would be the very first thing they'd say to each other? Share your predictions in the comments below. Our journey begins in the crucible of 1940. France has fallen seemingly overnight. Britain stands alone, defiant but vulnerable, bracing for the onslaught of the Luftwaffe in the Battle of Britain. The world holds its breath, teetering on the brink of an abyss. Now inject a bizarre twist of fate into this grim reality. Perhaps a clandestine operation gone awry, a secret meeting arranged by desperate intermediaries, or an inexplicable temporal anomaly. Whatever the cause, the impossible has happened. Adolf Hitler, the architect of the Third Reich, and Winston Churchill, the bulldog of British resistance, are brought together. They are confined within a single, inescapable space. No aids, no guards, no escape routes. This isolation is key. It strips away their entourages, their propaganda machines, their armies. It leaves only two men, their ideologies, and their raw, unvarnished wills. The air in that room would be thick with palpable tension, a suffocating weight of history and hatred. These are not just opposing personalities, they are the embodiments of diametrically opposed worldviews. One, a totalitarian demagogue driven by racial supremacy and conquest. The other, a staunch defender of liberty, democracy, and the British Empire. Their immediate reactions would be a study in human drama. Would Hitler attempt to intimidate, to dominate with his infamous glare and theatrical pronouncements? Would Churchill meet him with icy defiance, a withering stare, or perhaps a sardonic wit? One might imagine Hitler, ever the opportunist, immediately offering terms. A quick, decisive end to the war, perhaps, if Britain would only surrender. Churchill, on the other hand, might consider them not out of weakness, but to gauge the depth of his adversary's delusion. Or perhaps a flicker of morbid curiosity would pass between them. Two men, each convinced of his own destiny, suddenly face to face with the others. The central mind-bending question then arises, what could these two men possibly agree on? The very notion seems absurd, yet the stakes are impossibly high. Britain is on the ropes, and Hitler, though victorious, faces the daunting prospect of a cross-channel invasion. Consider the potential negotiation points. Could a ceasefire be brokered, perhaps with territorial concessions? Would Britain sacrifice the Channel Islands, or even parts of its vast empire, to avoid utter destruction? Another possibility is a non-aggression pact. Britain's neutrality could be guaranteed, allowing Hitler to focus his entire war machine on the Eastern Front, on the Soviet Union. This would be a monumental betrayal of principles, but a pragmatic choice for survival. Or perhaps a divided Europe. Britain would retain its empire, its global reach, while Hitler would be granted unchallenged continental dominance. A chilling new world order carved out by two men in a single room. The driving factors for such a desperate bargain are clear. Britain's desperation, its very existence hanging by a thread, and Hitler's desire for a quick, decisive victory to avoid a protracted war that could drain his resources. But the costs would be immense, almost unbearable. The sacrifice of freedom, the betrayal of allies, the tacit acceptance of Nazi ideology's triumph in Europe, the moral stain would be indelible. Of course, the scenario could quickly devolve. The intense pressure, the clashing egos, the sheer weight of their historical animosity might lead to a heated argument. Words could escalate, tempers could flare, and the confrontation could turn physical. Hitler, known for his volatile temper and sudden rages, might lash out. Churchill, a man of immense physical courage and fighting spirit, would not back down. The personalities are a powder keg waiting to ignite. The consequences of such a violent encounter would be catastrophic, reshaping the very fabric of the war. If Hitler were to kill Churchill, the impact on British resistance would be devastating. The symbol of defiance would be gone, potentially leading to a collapse of morale and a swift surrender. Conversely, if Churchill were to kill Hitler, the immediate effect would be chaos within the Nazi regime. But the war would not necessarily end. A new leader, perhaps Goering or Himmler, would likely emerge, and the conflict would continue, albeit under a different, possibly even more brutal command. The war machine, once set in motion, is not easily stopped by the removal of a single individual. The ideology, the infrastructure, the millions of soldiers would remain. The ripple effects of this single, confined encounter would cascade across the entire Second World War. If a negotiated peace were achieved, the war could end years sooner. Millions of lives would be saved. The Holocaust, in its full horrific scale, might be curtailed or even prevented. The fate of the Soviet Union would be drastically altered, perhaps never invaded, or facing a different kind of conflict. The entire trajectory of the Cold War would be fundamentally changed, or perhaps never even occur. Alternatively, if the encounter led to a prolonged war, the strategies would be different. Alliances might shift in unexpected ways. The timing of US entry into the war could be delayed or accelerated. The brutality of the Eastern Front, already unimaginable, could reach new depths. The ultimate outcome of the war itself would be entirely different. The post-war world, as we know it, would be unrecognizable. The United Nations might never exist. The Iron Curtain, a defining feature of the 20th century, might never descend. The world map, the geopolitical landscape, would be redrawn in ways we can only speculate upon. The long-term consequences of that single room would reverberate through decades, shaping the present day in profound ways. Would the Cold War, as we understand it, have happened? Or would a different power struggle emerge, perhaps between a dominant Nazi Europe and a surviving British Empire? Would the European Union, born from the ashes of 2 world wars, ever come into being? Or would a different form of European unity, perhaps under a more sinister banner, have taken root? Global politics would be irrevocably altered. The balance of power would shift dramatically. Would American dominance still emerge as it did? Would China's rise be different or even possible in such a changed world? Beyond geopolitics, the cultural and social changes would be immense. How would art, literature, and music have evolved in a world where Nazism had achieved a form of victory or compromise? What would be the prevailing values regarding freedom, democracy, and human rights? The very foundations of our modern society would be built on a different historical bedrock. Beneath the grand geopolitical shifts and military strategies lies the raw human element. Imagine the psychological toll on both men in that room. The immense pressure, the weight of millions of lives resting on their shoulders, the impossible choices. For Hitler, it would be a confrontation with his own mortality, his failures, and perhaps for a fleeting moment the monstrous nature of his actions. Would he see the true cost of his ambition reflected in Churchill's eyes? For Churchill, the dilemma would be agonizing. To compromise his ideals, to sacrifice principles he held dear, to betray allies for the sake of his nation's survival. What impossible choices would he face? What moral lines would he be forced to consider crossing? The underlying themes of this hypothetical encounter are profound: power, morality, the fragility of human existence, and the immense weight of individual choices and their consequences. History, we realize, is not a fixed, immutable narrative. It is a complex tapestry woven thread by the actions and decisions of human beings. So, what if Hitler and Churchill were locked in a room? The possibilities are endless, each more chilling or hopeful than the last. We could have a very different world, one of uneasy peace, one of enduring tyranny, or one consumed by an even greater, more devastating conflict. The value of such speculation lies not in finding a definitive answer, for none exists. Instead, it forces us to confront the complexities of history, to question our assumptions, and to appreciate the delicate balance upon which our present reality rests. It reminds us that the world we inhabit is the result of countless choices, made by countless individuals at critical junctures. Now it's your turn. What do you think would have happened in that room? Share your thoughts, your theories, and your own alternative histories in the comments below. If this mind-bending journey sparked your imagination, please like this video, share it with your fellow history buffs, and subscribe to WWII for more thought-provoking scenarios. We're always looking for new what-if ideas, so let us know what historical turning points you'd like us to explore next. Thank you for watching.